Hey, friends out there in internet land, this is Albert Abramson, script doctor. I've posted some of my other videos on storytelling. Um, I do get a lot of different scripts and screenplays that come in that need work, and some of them need a lot of work. Most of them are just this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and there's no underlying theme or connection to it. And some of those screenplays are 100, 150, even 200 pages. The movie that I want to talk about is called Kenny. I saw Kenny I think when it first came out, I think it's got 450,000 views on YouTube. Should have a lot more. It's written and directed by Jeanette McCurdy. I actually didn't know about the existence of her performance in iCarly. I didn't know about her past or history. All I knew was that she was a really great independent film director, and she's also done great award-winning work in Strong Independent Women, which is also admittedly pretty depressing, but that's also a really good movie that's won a lot of awards, independent film. So as a script doctor, I might be using some terms that some viewers might not understand, but I'll try and explain things. So Kenny, when I first saw the movie, I obviously the new book, I'm Glad My Mother Died, hadn't come out yet. However, the story is about Kenny who lives with his mother, or his mother lives with him. His mother, of course, is abusive and narcissistic. He is trying to get out of the house and trying to get away from her. He has his own dreams of becoming a rock star or any kind of performer. I can certainly sympathize with that, although I'm not a great guitar player, to be honest. Kenny practices a lot, and I think that's part of his character. It's one of the things that's set up in Act 1. The inciting incident, I felt, which is the point that kind of gets the story going, is the point where he's calling his friend and he's trying to get his friend to show up to performance, and Kenny, of course, shows up to the studio a couple of times in the story by himself. Jeanette McCurdy broke a few rules in the development of the story, but I think that that's a good thing. Obviously, some of you have seen me post about George Lucas breaking the rule on MacGuffin. Alfred Hitchcock used to say that the MacGuffin was just some inanimate object with no agency, and it's something that the good guys and the bad guys and everyone is chasing after, trying to get a hold of, but it has no agency or decision making in and of itself. If it's anything else, then it's a rescue or kidnapping adventure. However, George Lucas broke that rule with Star Wars when he made R2-D2 the MacGuffin, and of course R2-D2 has his own not only agency, but we see him arguing with C-3PO in the start of the movie, and we see him arguing again in Return of the Jedi. So we can clearly see that R2-D2 does have some thinking going on, and yet he is the MacGuffin. He's what everyone's after. Although some people have argued, well, it's the Death Star plans loaded onto R2-D2. That's the MacGuffin, but I think you're mincing words. I think it's great when we see someone make a film or a story that breaks even one of the rules, and still manages to do it well. Jeanette McCurdy and Kenny manages to break, I think, 3 or 4 major rules of storytelling. And the biggest one that she breaks, so spoiler alert both for the book and for Kenny. If you haven't seen Kenny, go watch it. I'm going to post the link in the description down below. One of the great atrocities of some of the old ancient plays from ancient Greece and ancient Rome was they always used deus ex machina. That is, they had the problem that had to be solved. Writers would always write themselves into some big complex fiasco. And the movies were terrible because at the end they would literally put an actor on a crane playing Hercules, Heracles, Athena, and they would wheel that character in like Chris Farley, and they would hold that character over, and he would wave his magic wand and use his godlike Olympic powers and reset everything and fix all of the problems. And that's one of the reasons that of all the playwrights and thousands of works, only 7 playwrights from antiquity managed to hold through, and only a handful of books like Homer's Odyssey and Homer's Iliad managed to survive By the way, Homer's Odyssey is a terrific adventure story. It's certainly not historically accurate like the Iliad is, but it's a wonderful adventure story. It's kind of a saga. It is one of those books where this happens and then this happens and then this happens, and there's not a clear theme in the story until you get closer to the end. However, Kenny, they do resolve the problem at the end. The climax is amazing. That what finally solves the problem is Kenny's mother dies, or is about to die, and of course at the end she mutters something like, "I'm gonna die, I'm about to die," and Kenny can't figure out what she's saying, and it turns out she's saying Canada Dry. You know, this spoiled, entitled narcissist, terrible character, turns out to be kind of an analogy to Jeanette McCurdy's own mother in I Can't Believe My Mother, or I'm sorry, it's really late. I'm Glad My Mother Died, which is I didn't like the title of the book, but the book itself is actually really phenomenal. I've gone over it twice already. It's terrifically well written, and Jeanette in each of her vignettes starts with a theme, explains the theme, provides evidence for it, and uses examples from her own life to support that. One of the things, if you've read that book, I guess it's a bestseller now, is that some of the scenes in Kenny that actually happened in real life. So Jeanette McCurdy's mother was terrible, sometimes abusive, controlling, driving, and actually narcissistic. And I've known people in my own life who exhibited a lot of the same negative qualities. And a lot of people are coming forward and talking about their own history, whether it's from abusive parents or teachers or officials, police, teachers, family members, religious officials they've encountered in their own life who are as abusive, as controlling. And when it comes from a parent or someone who lives with you in the household and you can't get away from them, so there are a lot. Discovered that there were a lot of parallels. I think on the third or fourth viewing of Kenny, now that I've read I'm Glad My Mother Died, there are a lot of parallels. So in the hospital scene, of course, Todd, the very famous podcaster, comes through, and even though it's this tragic and terrible moment where their mother is on the deathbed, just like the scene from I'm Glad My Mother Died, the book, right at the halfway point in that book, her mother does die, and you see a lot of the fallout from that. It's amazing because Jeanette McCurdy herself, of course, was very famous, and something like 25 people or so had come in and said, "Oh, aren't you Jeanette McCurdy?" You know, people wanted to get selfies, they wanted to get autographs, they wanted to have their moment in the sun with someone famous right at the moment before, during, and after the death of her mother, which was at the time she described as the worst thing that had ever happened to her. About a year ago, my own grandmother died, and it was several months of grieving. It was one of the worst things that I've been through. She was 99. We knew that it was going to happen. She was not in terrific health in the last couple of months, so we did have some warning. But even still, it was a really, really challenging thing to go through. And the same for Jeanette McCurdy. Her mother had been through cancer before and had a couple of near-death experiences already when this happened, and yet it was a terrible and tragic experience for her that she describes in the book. And yet once she becomes free of the controlling, narcissistic mother, where we have the analogy in the movie Kenny, she's able to get free of that, get some time apart, start going to therapy. Her early therapy sessions, of course, are not super duper productive. Another thing that happens in Kenny that it seems to work, even though it wouldn't normally work in other movies. Jeanette McCurdy is a brilliant director. Is the pinch point. Usually, the pinch point when I'm rewriting other people's screenplays. The pinch point is something that happens early in Act Two. It's like a third of the way into the movie. But in Kenny, which is a short 16-minute film, a pinch point seems to happen very, very early on, almost opening scene, where the mother, you can already tell that Kenny wants to move out and move on with his own life, and that he has his own dreams. Kenny's mother is kind of wheelchair bound, and the fact that she is not only tied to that, it seems like she kind of refuses to get up and grab the remote, so she demands that he get out of the shower. She's very specific about what time he comes home from work. She's very specific about what he gets her from his fast food job. He's tied to a fast food job. He can't move ahead because he has to care for his mother. That's unusual. It's not unheard of in independent films. Independent films, audiences will usually let you break a few rules in order to get to the end. You're not supposed to use exposition, show, don't tell. But Jeanette McCurdy uses exposition a couple of times early in the movie. Later on in the hospital scene, which is about the last 2/3 of the story, one of the nurses comes up and is of course exhibits some of the same controlling aspects, telling her, you can't call your family members, you can't use a cell phone here, you can't have this many people in the room. After reading the book, I'm glad my mother died. It was amazing how many parallels there were between the movie Kenny and this movie. So when writers are given advice, they're advised to write what you know, write from your own experience. Don't just make up a whole complete different world that has nothing to do with your own past or background, because you'll just be kind of floating through the air and making things up as you go, and there'll be a lot of inconsistencies. If you write what you know, you write from your own background, you write from real people you've known, the writing comes out much better. And that's definitely the case in this one, and that's definitely the case in Strong Independent Women. And that's also the case, of course, in her earlier outing, What's Next for Sarah, which is a really funny miniseries, which I'm sorry didn't get more attention than it did. If it gotten more airing, I think that might have won some awards also. So I'd like to see Jeanette McCurdy make more independent films. Hopefully now that she's done with her book, we'll see a few more projects along the way. There were a couple of other issues that I wanted to mention. I'll add some things down in the comments when I think of them, but I was really impressed with not only how much material is in, but how compact the story is. One of the great achievements of modern writing. Oops, TV's going out. Great achievements of modern screenplays. The good ones are. Sorry, my TV just went out while I'm talking. One of the great achievements is the ability to take a whole story, like a whole 400-page novel, and compact it into something very short. The first time I saw a project where someone took an entire book, in other words, a very long story or novella, and interpreted it in film form, was Jurassic Park. Which is, of course, entirely fictional, and all the science fiction that's proposed in there, trying to use mosquitoes, the blood from the mosquitoes, to get some kind of dinosaur DNA. We've later found that that's completely impossible, but there are ways to get dinosaur DNA. That's a total another side project. But I would advise everyone to watch Jeanette McCurdy's independent films. They're all very good. Some of them are really good. And also download the new book, I'm Glad My Mother Died, on audiobook. It's really terrific. It is sad at times learning about the stress of child actors, the stress and controls and the betrayals that come from producers, friends, family, people you work with. I've encountered some of the same stresses when I worked as a merchant mariner, and frankly some of the life and death scenarios and close calls with death but that's not something for children to go through. It's too much stress for kids, 6, 7, 8 years old, to be putting up with the kind of workload, being put out in the sun and having to stand there for several hours with no cover and no water and no bathroom trips. Some of what the child actors are going through. I think that there needs to be some legislation put into effect to protect them. I think that we need Coogan's laws in all 50 states. Jennette McCurdy, ironically, has money on missingmoney.com. So if anybody happens to know her, have her go look that up. I don't know how much money it is, but it's some money just kind of lying around in an account with state of California. And most importantly, if you have friends who've had very stressful, difficult, or abusive upbringings, be sure to have them get a copy of that book. You don't need to get the hardcover book with the signature and everything. Just buy the audio book. It's one of the best, and the source of a lot of eating disorders that were kind of a mystery to my generation when we were kids. Why people would overeat or undereat, or why some girls and some guys would suffer from bulimia and anorexia. It makes more sense once you read the entire book. I don't think it's something that you can just quickly summarize. It's something where you have to kind of read the whole saga, and it is one of the best books out there, and these are some of the best independent films out there on the topic. So thank you very much. Please like and subscribe and share this video if you want other people to learn about eating disorders, substance abuse, and childhood abuse, and the need for many people to seek therapy. There are some free online options available for therapy if you don't have money, and there are a lot of forums, and there are a lot of opportunities out there to help that weren't around when our generation was young. And this is Albert Abramson signing out. Take care.